What's up, you guys? This is Devin from CFX Studios TV, back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about the Sekey 48-inch L collapsible wagon. Now, these sports wagons that you see on Amazon, they are not few and far between. You can find so many readily available wagons at your disposal, whether you're using it for sports, whether you're using it for all these different kinds of things for outdoor events. Now, a lot of people don't think to use it for media, and I love to use it for media because if you have a whole bunch of equipment or big equipment and you need to really move it all in all at once so you can get everything set up all at once instead of going back and forth out to your vehicle to get everything done, then this is a very, very useful piece of equipment. Now, utilizing these wagons, they collapse and fold up like an accordion. They are very, very useful getting them in and out of your cars. And if you have a bigger utility vehicle, it's even better because you can just fold it up, put it in a corner, and put in extra stuff. They can even fit in cars in some cases, depending on what size they are. And utilizing the Sekey 48-inch L wagon, I was able to get it in my SUV, but some people might have cars, so they might need to get the smaller variation. But for these things to fold up like an accordion, it makes it so much easier for you to get them in and out of different places when you unload and load up. So if you're like a little league person that needs a lot of balls and sports and stuff like that, or a lot of equipment, bats, and all these other things and accessories, it's easy for you to utilize that if you're a coach. But I like to use it for media, so all these big productions that I have, lights, sports, and I photograph a lot of sports, so it falls right in line. Or if you're photographing headshots, you got studio equipment you need to put up, this is the wagon for you. And a lot of people who get DSLRs, mirrorless cameras, camcorders, and all these things, when they try to update and upgrade their performance or update their actual production, you end up needing to have a lot of equipment, and then the equipment may or may not be manned. So you need to put a whole bunch of stuff inside those wagons to get them out. These are perfect for them. Now, these wagons tend to have a lot of space. Now, you have a lot of different variants from Sekey. Now, I'm going to be reviewing the 48-inch L Sekey collapsible wagon, but there are smaller variations of this wagon. If you look in the descriptions below, you'll see various different sizes that you can utilize. But I'm going to be reviewing this from a standpoint of somebody having it for 2 years at the biggest size that you can purchase. Now, with the biggest size, they advertise like a 550 weight capacity. I probably never put that much weight into this wagon, so that's something to think about. A lot of people, like one of my friends told me, was that, hey, usually they put that weight requirement to say, oh, we want you to put this much weight in there, but then you find out you can't and it ends up breaking down. That has not been my experience for the vast amount of things that I put into this wagon. It has never broken down based on the amount of weight that was in this wagon. But here's some of the things to think about when you're actually utilizing these wagons, so you'll know what to experience when you purchase yours. The first thing is space. Space really matters. Now, space is a ratio because you have to actually fit this wagon back in your car, vehicle, your SUV, or whatever you have. But if you get a smaller wagon, you're not able to put as much stuff in there. That's just physics. You can't help that. You can't blame that on the company that made it. I'm not sponsored by Sekey, but all these things that I'm telling you, it's reality. After 2 years I've been using it, I purchased it with my own money. It all depends on which one you get, how much space you have. It's pretty simple. From wall to wall, it pretty much measures up to what they tell you in the description. The only difference is how high these wagons are. Now, I've utilized more than just Sekey wagons. I've utilized the Mack wagon. I've utilized the Gorilla Cart as well. But one thing that I noticed about the Sekey wagon that's different from the Gorilla Cart and the Mack wagon is that the height of the vehicle matters, or the height of the actual wagon matters. So if it's lower to the ground, you have better aerodynamics. That means a lot of the weight is going to go towards the ground, and it's not going to be very top heavy. For those of you who know a little bit about aerodynamics, you know that if a lot of weight is suspended at a higher level, then you don't really have control over the weight. For example, it's the difference between driving a car and a truck that's high off the ground. You have worse aerodynamics if the truck is higher off the ground. The car is lower to the ground, you can turn and handle it way better. So therefore, if the wagon is closer to the ground, you can turn it and maneuver it way better. You need to find out how high your wagon is off the ground, but most of the Sekey wagons that I've experienced, especially this one, go off that same kind of dynamic of having it not very high off the ground. This will help you get things lower in and the weight go down and be more suspended towards the ground. It helps maneuvering this, and then also having the wall slightly higher and then having the floor closer to the ground. This will help you maneuver everything around and get more things built up from the bottom of the wagon. And also, most of the Sekey wagons incorporate this low to the ground floor and relatively high wall, so you're able to get a whole bunch of things in there. The cheaper wagons I've encountered and seen in public, they tend to be a little bit higher from the floor and then not have very high sidewalls, and then you can't put anything inside of it, and it's hard to maneuver because most of the weight is actually higher than you think. You never really think about these things until you actually buy it and you're like, oh wait, I'm screwed because I can't actually put a lot of things in here because the volume of the inside of the vehicle is not enough for whatever accessories I might have, light stands, cameras, bags, lights. If you're sports, you know, any kind of bats, balls, anything that you may need. So we went over the space. The next thing we need to talk about really is the ergonomics and handling of these Sekey wagons. Now, the longer you get a wagon, no matter what brand it is, the harder it's going to be to actually get it through a door. A lot of people don't understand that when you get a longer wagon, it is harder to get to the door. So if you're pulling the wagon and then you're holding the door, because most event centers have doors that close. So these doors close and they're gonna be closing the wagon in with you to try to either get you out or keep you in. So you're either gonna need an assistant or understand to slowly let the door push up against the wagon as you pull it out of the doorway. And you're also going to need to understand that if some of those doors close, they lock, and you need to understand how your wagon affects whether or not you're going to be able to get it through the doors safely. Also, if you have any equipment kind of spilling out of the back, for example, I have light stands that are very long, even if they're collapsed down to their minimum size, they're going to kind of flow out of the back, kind of like a pickup truck carrying extra equipment. So the door is going to kind of hit that. If you don't have that protected, you could scratch a door, scratch anything in an event center, a wall, low clearance turning angles, or turning angles that don't give you enough space to turn the wagon because the wagon is so long. That 48-inch wagon is definitely going to present that issue. I have a long wingspan, but I can't tell you how many times I've been in a situation where I can't get the wagon all the way through the door while holding the door. So you really want to think about that when you order these longer wagons. Get a shorter one if you don't think that it can fit through the door. You might want to try to get something, maybe the step down from the 48, because I can just barely get the 48 through the door almost every time I get through a door. So you need to think out your route. It's kind of like driving an 18-wheeler or a big, long FedEx freight. When you're trying to get that through certain places, you have to think it out before you do it, especially when you're amongst a whole bunch of traffic, especially when you're amongst a lot of people. If you work at schools, if you work at anywhere with a high population of sports athletes, you have to understand that their safety matters. So wherever you put your wagon, especially if it's a longer one, you need to map out the route, lock those wheels down, and have everything prepared. The next thing we're going to talk about is that new triangulated system that Sekey has on its wagons. This is one thing that's different from most of the wagons, different from the Gorilla wagon, different from the Mack wagon that I was using earlier. This triangulated system keeps the handle suspended in mid-air. Bang. The handle doesn't lean off to the side. It doesn't waft off to the side. And these little things, when you're using the wagon day in and day out, it's like the steering wheel. You don't want your steering wheel to be off to the side and moving while you're trying to control a car, right? Well, the same thing with the wagon. This wagon, you don't want the stick to be all over the place and you reaching for the wagon trying to get the wheel, and the wheels are probably going to move with the actual stick itself. No, Sekey has done a great job in utilizing this little crossbar that triangulates the steering column of the actual wagon. So when you grab for that little stick to pull the wagon, it is actually already standing up straight, ready for you to grab it at the center of the wagon almost every time. All this stuff in here. This is an embankment, essentially, coming downhill, so I'm not tilting the camera. You can see here, I'm testing out the braking system, because if the brakes didn't work, guess where it would be? It would be in the water. So there's that. As you can see here, we're utilizing the brakes, both of them this time. Now getting this out of the hill is not gonna be fun, but as you can see, all the way, and there is stuff in these bags. There's stuff in these bags. All these bags are pretty much filled with stuff, and this still in here, and pretty sure we still got our light stands all the way down in there. As you can see, they are light stands. So the braking system on the Sekey Wagon, despite its enormous size, works. So you can imagine how good it would work for a wagon that was smaller than this size. Check that out, guys. Now, as you can see, I have this still fully loaded with all of my bags and stuff like that. The moment you start to put weight on this wagon, no matter what kind of scene you're in, no matter what kind of scene you think you're in, you still might be on a slope. Now, for those of you who are not used to loading up a wagon with a lot of heavy stuff, well, that slope starts to take effect extremely easily. And that slope could take effect, in this case, it's coming towards me because I'm standing between me and my vehicle. But that slope can easily take effect into the actual vehicle. So the last thing you want to do is be in a situation where you're not watching and you don't have any brakes. And I love the fact that, like I told you, that triangulated system keeps the handle right here, so I have immediate control over my wagon and can keep it from going wherever I need it, well, wherever I don't want it to go. Matter of fact, every time. So you don't have to worry about your turning system wafting and moving, especially with the type of wheels that you have. Now, with the Gorilla Wagon, I didn't experience this. It's more of like a slinky system. Now, granted, since my Gorilla Wagon is a little bit smaller than my Sekey Wagon, it turns a little bit more agile, but at the same time, it's hard to find where that stick is to pull the actual handle. So having it staying in one spot, it definitely keeps your mind in one place. You're not reaching all over the place to try to find it, and you don't have extra radius, so to speak, not contributing to the turning of the wheels. For example, the Sekey, when that triangulated system is standing straight up, it actually is a direct line to the turning of the wheels and the movement of the wagon. Whereas if your steering wheel, so to speak, is moving all over the place, you don't know how much effort you're contributing to the turning or the moving of the wagon in a lot of places. And it's a subtle thing, but it is a big thing when you're trying to move a lot of equipment. Every little movement counts, and all your energy counts, especially if you're going uphill. The next thing I want to talk about when it comes to ergonomics and handling is braking. A lot of these wagons actually don't have brakes, and the more equipment, the more weight you put in these wagons, it's a big deal. You can't, if you load up on a hill, because you don't always have the luxury of knowing where you park. You don't always have the luxury of being in the most level situation where the elevation is not going too high. Your wagon's gonna go down the hill along with your equipment while you're doing this. And sometimes you don't have an extra person to help you. So what you need to do is make sure that you actually have brakes to keep your wagon from moving. It's a subtle thing, but the brakes are always there. All you gotta do is click them down, and they're there, and they always do an awesome job. And it keeps actually thieves from stealing stuff because they don't know that you have a wagon. If they just want to pull the wagon off and run off with it, well, if the brakes are there, it impedes you from stealing it. And then you're like, wait, I got to get the brakes off. By that time, as long as you're around your wagon, you can actually find who's pulling your wagon, where, why. They don't think about brakes being on wagons nowadays because most of the cheaper wagons don't have brakes. That'll keep somebody from riding off with some stuff, or it gives you a second or a beat to actually figure out where things are, and every second counts in that situation. It also keeps it safe, like I said, from rolling down the hill and all these other things, but it also keeps it all in one spot. Sometimes you just need your stuff to stay in one spot, and that just helps out. So brakes are a must, and you need some strong brakes. The next thing for ergonomics and handling is the wheels. The wheels have a thick width, and this thick width it helps a lot. The reason why this helps a lot is because when you're going past curves and different elevations, when you have thinner wheels, those thinner wheels tend to bore into the ground a lot easier. And if you're on a tough terrain like mud or anything like grass or anything like that, these thinner wheels tend to just sink in. They just sink in. They don't have any kind of, I want to say, surface area, wider surface area to really grab on to the actual surface of the earth if you're outside or anything like that, or even if you're inside. If you have a softer ground, those wagon wheels that are thin, they're just going to bore into the earth. And then when you go to turn, in mud or anything like that, those wheels are just going to swash with the turn. It's going to make it harder. You probably are going to be able to get things moving, but it's going to be harder. Those thicker wheels on the Sekey Wagon really help. So the thicker wheels on the Sekey Wagon, they really keep them submerged above things and keeping them going. The only thing that's a drawback with those wheels is that the brakes, since there's not a lot of clearance between the actual brake clip and the wheel, mud gets trapped in there a lot of times. Now you can just rinse the mud out and it doesn't really keep you from going. But if you're in a high grass situation, which I've never really been in, a high enough grass situation where grass got in there, but you might want to think about that these wheels could get clogged with dirt and all these other things. But you still got brakes and you still got wheels that stay above the actual elevation of the ground, and therefore they don't get buried deep into the ground. Also, when you're pushing or pulling against a hill-like surface, they don't turn and cut and keep you from actually moving. Thinner wheels will turn and cut and actually keep you from moving the wagon if they don't get straight back in line. But since the thicker wheels don't really cut as hard and they can't really, aerodynamically, they're not as thin, they don't serve as walls, they tend to stay straight or move where you're trying to go. Just because they're thicker, and it takes a little bit more movement to actually get them to get out of line, if that makes sense to you. Now, last thing I want to talk about is the build. Now, when it comes to any kind of tool that's built with multiple different, I want to say, nuts and bolts, most people know that that's a great tool to have because nuts and bolts can always be replaced. A lot of these wagons that I see on Amazon that are just generic and or cheaper built, they tend to have rivets. Rivets are not easy to replace. Rivets are something that you have to cut off, find the right size, get the right tool to shoot the rivet back into the actual metal, and then clamp it back into place. And then you have to make sure that it's the right size, all these cross-referencing and all sorts of stuff. Now, most rivets are probably going to be easy to size up, but all the extra tools that you need to use rivets, they just become a hassle because rivets are not really meant to be taken off and reapplied. But the Sekey Wagon, a higher built, higher quality wagon, it has nuts and bolts or machine screws and bolts. So what this means is that if you go to your local, I don't know, hardware store like Home Depot, Lowe's, maybe even Harbor Freight, you can go to these stores and you can actually say, hey, this is my machine screw that's broken. This is my machine screw that needs to be replaced. I lost my machine screw and my bolt. These are the two that I have. Here, can you cross-reference this and find this bolt for me? I can buy as many of those, and those are cheap to purchase. You don't have to send this back to Sekey just because you got bolt missing or bolt broke or anything like that. And that's what makes this stand out above the rest, because a lot of people don't even think about that because a lot of people are not mechanically inclined when they go out to buy these wagons. And nobody wants to have to resolder any pieces or do anything that's above their pay grade because they're going to need to buy tools just to fix one little problem. Whereas since most people are not mechanically inclined, they're not going to know how to do that. So there's a lot of little small things that you can actually go about fixing on this wagon on your own, and you don't have to send anything back. For example, my 48-inch L Sekey Wagon, actually I was pulling it one day and the handle separated from the actual triangulation base. Now the handle has a little button right there that it extends out when you press that button, and that button has a spring and some kind of a metal piece that holds the entire contraption together. It's really an ingenious design. But I pulled it against the curb one day and the handle just pretty much came off of the actual triangulation suspension. So what I ended up doing was contacting Sekey. My wagon was about a year old, almost exactly to this day. And they were like, well, it's still in warranty, but since you have the spring piece and the button piece that came out, the metal button piece that came out, we'll actually send you a video to actually fix it. And these are certain things that you can't even actually buy in the store. So if this happens to you where your button piece slings out, check out my video in which I made a video of myself replicating what they did. Now, since it's a Chinese-based company, they were speaking in maybe Cantonese and another language, but they were able to actually show me the physical actions, and I was able to do it without even having to know exactly what they said. They were very prompt when they came back to the email. The customer service was great, and they don't even speak my language. And so what tends to happen is people shun them and be like, oh, I can't communicate with them, therefore customer service is not good. I've been through a lot of Chinese companies and a lot of companies overseas, but I gotta say, Sekey did an amazing job, not only contacting me and getting back with me over the holiday season really, very quickly, but also sending me a video, understanding that all you need to do is send us a picture of what you have in your hand, which was the spring and the actual button piece. They inspected it and they're like, oh, you have everything you need. All you gotta do is follow these videos, bang, bang, bada, bop, boom. It took me a few hours because I had to have a couple of tools like pliers and a little bit of like a butter knife kind of situation to get things right, and a Phillips screwdriver. But other than that, those are usual household items that you can find anywhere, and or they come with other tools in your house. So you gotta give it up for Sekey, because there's not much more that I can see on this wagon that would need to be replaced, unless you hit it with a car or something like that and break those metal poles where you have to go to re-weld and re-solder everything. At that point, you probably want to buy your own wagon or replacement. The only other thing that I could think to be a weakness in this wagon, which is something simple, is the actual fabric itself. And they actually asked me about the fabric when I initially contacted them, but it wasn't the fabric. And if the fabric was an issue, I want to contact Sekey to see if the fabric becomes an issue later down the line. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Build, customer service, ergonomics, space. I gotta say, the Sekey Wagon gets a 4.5 out of 5 from me. The only 0.5 that I didn't give them was that, like I said, I don't know anything about the material being replaced, and also maybe the wheels getting clogged up every once in a while. I do want to be able to wash the material, but I haven't really found any way to kind of take it off. I think maybe you can use the Phillips screwdrivers to take it off those L brackets on the edges there that hold it down and secure it, but I'm not sure. Other wagons have showed me how to take off material to clean it, but usually when I clean my wagon, I'll just spray it down and then just let it air dry with the material being in there. And that's a nice, to me, that's a nice alternative without having to take it off and put it back on. But I would have to think that maybe it will be, dried a little bit easier. And washed a little bit more thorough if I was able to take it off. Guys, if you want one of these wagons, look in the description below. I have different sizes up there, but Sekey has an amazing wagon, amazing wheels, amazing locks. Oh yeah, and the last thing was the beach. It does kind of work a little bit on the beach on flatter sand. Now, if the sand is really, really rough and terrainy, like somebody's walked over it, this wagon won't do well at all, especially if it has a lot of weight on it. But if it's the softer sand that's more level, oh, it'll work perfectly fine. Check out my video for more information on that. Links in the description below, guys. Affiliate links, that gives me a kickback, so go ahead and support the affiliate links. Also, look in the links to find out my other video about me bringing this to the beach, another video about me fixing the actual piece for the button of the 48-inch L Sekey Wagon. I'm Devin with CFX Studios TV. Support the channel by the Cash App link below in the description below. Also, look for the different links. Click on them, even if you don't want to buy them. Check them out, and stay tuned for the next video.